Cask ale is the lifeblood of the British beer industry and a vital part of our country's culture. It was only a few decades ago that it was all we drank in our pubs, but in the last decade or so it's been in serious, sometimes double-digit decline. The closure of our beautiful pubs and increasingly tight margins in beer all play their part, but there's also been a drop-off in interest in cask ale, especially among younger generations. Its reputation has been damaged by clichés about who drinks it and quality issues related to how hard it is to brew well and serve right. We've come to believe that cask ale at its best is the ultimate way to enjoy beer. We've fallen in love with our traditional pubs, styles, breweries and culture and hate to see it slowly falling apart. So we've decided to do something about it. 3 years ago we made a 5-part documentary exploring the British cask ale scene, through its rich history and traditions to the modern challenges and opportunities it faces. Inspired but also concerned about its future, in the last episode we came up with an ambitious plan: to lead a campaign to get cask recognised by UNESCO as intangible heritage. Since then we've been working hard behind the scenes to gather support and lobby politicians and interest groups. But we've also been collecting the evidence we'll need to present to UNESCO when the time comes. Evidence in the form that we know best: film. So in association with some fantastic beer businesses, we're thrilled to present Series 2 of Keep Cask Alive. Every summer, as the evenings stretch out and people slow down and seek shade, the British countryside comes to life. It's not new life like in spring, but the fruition of it. The moment when nature's hard work pays off. All over the country, farmers ignite their engines to harvest barley, wheat and hops for the brewing industry, covering thousands of miles and endless hairpin turns to keep our island in beer. The UK's rich brewing history means our small nation is still the 7th largest barley grower in the world, and thanks to centuries of experience, perhaps the best producer of malt for brewing. Sadly, the story of UK hop growing is very different. Once the world's biggest hop growing region, it now has just 50 farms remaining. That decline is almost exclusively down to the struggles that British cask ale brewers face, and a perfect example of just how fundamental beer is to its neighbouring industries like agriculture. To protect our remaining farms, champion our growers and support our breweries, their stories need to be told. So in this week's episode we're going to explore the remarkable journey that malt and hops take from grain to glass. And we're going to do it during one of the most exciting times in the beer calendar, green hop season, when hops fresh off the vine are thrown into the boil just hours after being picked, to make unique and delicious seasonal drinks enjoyed only at this time of year. Hops, however, ripen in late August, by which time most of the UK's barley will have been harvested. So we started with a trip to Norfolk, the grain basket of the UK, at the height of the British summer.
So today we are off to Cungham Farms. It's in North Norfolk. It's a beautiful hilltop kind of farm where they're growing, about half of what they grow is barley, and as a result of that, probably about half of that is barley for beer. And it's the height of summer right now, it's late July, and we're going to follow that beautiful ingredient all the way to crisp malting. One of the best maltsters in the UK, world renowned, world revered. We've done so much stuff with them before, including heritage malts. Today we're going to be going through the big plant and learning essentially the connection between farmers and maltsters and brewers, because although we tend to break those up into entirely different jobs, entirely different industries as well, certainly farming and brewing, they are in fact incredibly reliant on each other in exactly the same ecosystem, and even using similar processes to help each other out. So we are out in a place called Cungham in North Norfolk, visiting the harvest of some beautiful, beautiful barley. We've got 2 combines going on behind me. The air is thick with the bristles of what's being discarded by these combines. You can smell, if not sort of maltiness, you can smell a graininess in the air. On a day like today, and it needs to be a day pretty much like today, because you need really dry air. That gets the crop dry, it means that when you store it, it's not going to go mouldy. So you have to do it on more intense hot days like this. These guys will be spending about 15 hours in these combines. You know, they're there until the field is done. They leave until tomorrow. Well, in 2 days' time, it's stormy here in the UK. It's supposed to be, so they need to get it done now or never, just like me and Brad.
Here we're growing about 200 hectares of both winter and spring. So we've got a spring crop here, which is Laureate. And then the other variety we grow is Vessel here this year, which all goes into crisp malting, just down the road at Ryborough. So it's probably, as the crow flies, probably about 10 miles maximum.
Yeah.
Straight into brewing there.
Yeah, amazing short food miles and.
Well, exactly. That's the joy of doing it. Obviously, this is malting land. Light soils really helps with that. I'm hesitant because we're still very early on in the season, but at the moment it's going well. We've had a lot of rain, and now we're going to a dry period, so hopefully it prolongs and we can get everything off and into the shed.
That at least bodes well for the autumnal fresh hop ales that we'll be talking about later in the series. So there's a lot of pressure on the folks in the combines at the moment to get it done if there's rain coming.
We've got about 4 to 6 weeks to make sure everything's in the shed before you start losing quality, and it all comes fit at a similar time. I don't know how
far it goes beyond that horizon, but it's a long way to the horizon for a start.
Yeah, so this field is about 23 hectares, so just over 50 acres, which is about 50 football pitches.
How many acres until we get run over?
Not many.
So 4 to 6 weeks to get it all done. At the end of that, is it beer that farmers will be drinking?
A lot of them.
A lot of them.
Unfortunately, the days have gone when you could have a beer in the corner of the field every evening and just enjoy that. But no, when it gets to the end of harvest, although the pressure's still on to get the next year's crop in the ground, everyone can just stop and have a beer and enjoy it, definitely.
And is there a real kind of connection to, because I think a lot of drinkers, they're slightly divorced from what's going on literally behind here. There's literally a deer running away from this combine. From the nature that we're in, and this product that, you know, it's become quite commercialised, particularly on the keg side. Are farmers, do they feel part of that ecosystem? Are they aware of the magic that happens after this point?
I think it's important, as we've just been talking about, how close we are to Ryborough. And for us, it's important to know. I think almost everything that we produce, we like to know where it goes. And it's an also important question when people ask us, where's your food going? But then we also have noticed that distinctive distance from the population as such that don't understand about what's going on here. So it is nice to obviously speak to people and talk to people and educate people about where it's coming from and what's actually going on behind us. That's part of our job as such as well, because we're part of the education, and if we don't educate people and help people about where it's coming from, then we're to blame, really.
So now we're off to Crisp, and we're going to see both that connection to the farm, all the data I think that we're going to see, all of the things that they're looking for in the malt on the farm are the same as at Crisp, and then again at the brewery as well. So we're going to trace that line right through and see just how connected every cask ale pint is to the land on which it was grown and the people that grew it and malted it.
Crisp Malting was founded in 1870 and still has its original floor maltings, which it uses for smaller batches of heritage varieties. Today though, we were taking a tour of the main plant with Technical Director Dr. Dave Griggs to learn the process of malting from field to bag.
So we've got this queue of trucks coming through here. They're bringing the barley in.
They are. So this is the first stage. So this is what we're seeing here. We're seeing loads, 29-ton bulk loads of barley coming onto site. What's really important for us is that we assess the quality of the grain at the point of delivery. So we'll take the sample out of the back of the lorry. That sample will then go into the weigh booth brought to behind us. They'll carry out a range of tests to assess the quality and to ensure that it meets our specification in the barley. And we're able to take in over 1,000 tonnes of grain a day here during the peak harvest period.
That's sort of 30 lorries or so.
Well, more than that a day.
Right. When we talk about sort of the barley that's going to be used for brewing, what are we specifically looking for? Is it the really high quality barley that's being taken?
Yeah, I mean, we only deal in high quality barley, and our growers only produce high quality barley. So if we're looking at barleys to be turned into malt for brewing, typically we're using winter sown barley. So this is an example of winter barley which is coming in now. We're looking at lower nitrogen or lower protein contents. It's very typical of the malt that's being used traditionally in the UK for brewing cask conditioned beers. So they're 100% malt beers. So they don't need lots of additional protein around to convert material which hasn't been malted. So low nitrogen Maris Otter remains a very popular barley for us. We're still seeing a lot of great cask conditioned beers coming out of Maris Otter. Flagon would be one of the other winter barleys that we're using as well.
Flagon. So it feels like that name has come from.
You wonder why it was called Flagon. So
who knew?
We left the busy bridge to head to the first stage of the malting process, which happens in huge, buzzing and distinctly damp rooms.
So the first stage of the malting process is steeping, whereby we put the grain in a large tank of water and the grain absorbs moisture. Doing so, the grain is kind of woken up.
It's almost like water in the plant.
A bit of it, exactly like that, exactly the same. So like exactly in the field, if it's been sown in the field, it's waiting for moisture to absorb moisture to then get to activate the germination process. So once it's finished steeping, it's germinating, and we need to bring it into a specialist or more specialist area where we can control its temperature and moisture content. So this is a Saladin malting plant, and this was really the next sequence in development of malting from a floor malting. So this is the heart of the process. This is really where we're going from barley into malted barley. So although at the end of the process, physically barley and malt doesn't look that different, but inside there's been some fundamental structural changes.
It's so amazing that we're mimicking what's happening in nature, and obviously I guess cutting it short when it comes to the kilning. But it's incredible that we discovered that was the best thing to do if we wanted to brew with it.
Absolutely. I mean, the origins are really lost in the mists of time, but there's various theories around how it's come to be. But fundamentally, the process hasn't changed in thousands of years. The technology has changed, and the quantities of which we're malting at any one time has changed. But we're still relying on the natural processes of germination to convert a material which really you can't make beer out of into a material which is eminently suitable for making beer out of.
Is it British grain, or is it the British maltsters that sort of revered around the world?
It's a combination. I think it's a combination of varieties. It's a combination of growing conditions. So we're here in North Norfolk, probably the best barley land, certainly in Europe, I would suggest. I mean, we've got very nice climate, so it produces very good quality barleys, easy to malt barleys. And then it's the skills of the maltsters which have been developed over hundreds of years to know how to turn that barley into the malt that the brewers need to make their fantastic beers from.
Yeah, I guess back when Britain was sort of the brewing powerhouse of the world in sort of the 19th century, a lot of the innovations that happened in malting were happening in British maltings.
Well, they were, because at that time most of the brewers were making their own malt.
Yeah.
As well. So obviously these days there's very few brewers which make their own malt.
Yeah, a real sense of the history of crisp.
Which is,
this
is the whole history of the history of the plant, history of malting almost on here. This building, which has got this overhang in it, if you look at old photographs, back in the early 1900s, that's there. So this is all original buildings down here. Hi up, you're right.
So what was the overhang for?
I imagine it was for taking bags up.
Right. Okay.
They're taking grain, either barley up or malt out,
and
then going into storage before going into the. Probably it's all floor maltings at that stage.
Real Victorian feel to it.
Yeah.
So we're not in the kiln, but it feels like it.
It feels like it.
It's very, very warm here. But so this is where you're drying and potentially, caramelising.
Yeah, well, this is the last stage of the process. So we've done the steeping, we've put the moisture in, we've allowed the grain to germinate 4 days. We need to then stop germination, as it will become new plants, which we don't want. So we've got to stop it, and we do that by taking the moisture back out again. And that's done on a kiln. So this is one entire batch. This is what started as 220 tonnes of barley in here now. We're applying hot air through the grain bed.
And we call it a kiln, but I guess the temperatures are, you know, in terms of your oven at home, are pretty modest.
Oh, they are, yes.
Yeah.
It would be rare for us to go on this kiln above maybe 100 centigrade.
So we see this drying and then that's going out to the brewers. It really feels like mashing is almost like the final step of the malting
Well, it is
process.
very much so. It's almost a continuation
Yeah.
of what's going on here. So we describe their process, we're modifying the grain. So we're providing the brewers with a package of accessible starch. We're providing with the enzymes that will break the starch down, and some other attributes as well which will support yeast growth. So that little package then goes into the mash tun. By the time he's ground the malt, added water to it, you know, he's then kind of re-energising the processes which we've finished by drying it. So
Yeah, I've never sort of seen that sort of almost the brewery as an extension of the malting, which is why they used to be together in the same.
this is why they used to be together in the same place.
So I've never fully put together just how connected the farmers, the maltsters and the brewers are. Not just in terms of the people and what they want from the grain, but the literal processes. You know, we see the grain get wetted and dried, wetted and dried, wetted and dried constantly at the farm, at the maltster, and then in the mash on the actual brew day. I've never quite seen malt that way.
With my mind full of ideas and malt dust, our attention turned to the hop harvest and one of the UK's best cask ale brewers, 5 Points. Their best bitter is one of our favourite beers in the world. A prickly, sticky combination of caramel, pine, berries and oak. Every year they produce a handful of special editions of the beer, for which they use undried hops picked the same day that they brew the beer. We were all booked in to meet them at the hop farm as they made their final selection and raced it back to the brewery.
It's a dark, dingy and slightly wet Friday morning as we head down to pretty near Ashford to a farm we've been to a couple of times in the history of the Craft Beer channel called Hewkins Hops, owned by Ross Hewkins and grower of some truly fantastic, mostly British traditional hops, although there's some UK Cascade on the farm. And today I think we're going to be picking Goldings.
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 It's changed, doesn't it, a few times already?
It keeps changing. This is working with nature. You never quite know what hops are going to be ripest on the day. But I believe we're picking Goldings to go into the green hop with 5 Points. And we're going to meet Greg there. We're going to do some sensory, some rubbing of these delicious fresh hops, then bunging them in the van and driving as fast as we can up to Hackney to 5 Points Brewery to put them into a boil that is... the mash is probably about half done at this point up in London, and it's basically a race against time to get it up there while these hops are in the best condition.
On arrival, we headed straight out to the field to rub the hops we'd been muling back to 5 Points with head brewer Greg Hobbs. Given British hop's reputation for being more muted, spicy and earthy, we were amazed by the aromas we were getting from these unprocessed flowers.
So tell me about Golding. I'm gonna grab a couple and give them a rub.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, Goldings is one of the more sort of traditional varieties, one that we use a lot of at the brewery. I think we use about 1,200 kilos a year of Goldings. Yeah, classic British variety. I mean, to me, there's lots of honey, a bit of spice character to it. I mean, these smell fantastic. They're like perfect ripeness.
Because it's green, because this hasn't been processed at all yet, it's got a real floral character to it as well.
Yeah, real floral. I mean, it sounds silly to say, but like there is quite a green character to
green,
it, isn't it?
Smells
yeah.
green. Yeah, you can't really smell colours, but it does smell.
Exactly.
Smell green.
If you could.
But yeah, exactly. But I don't know, like lilies, like something really pungent. Is it lilies that are really pungent?
Lilies can be pungent. Yeah.
It's got something like something of that going on. It's a really beautiful smelling hop and really, really sticky and oily, which we don't always associate with British hops, but
No,
it is.
It is. Yeah, it really is.
Literally stuck to my hands now. These bits.
Yeah, we'll have green hands for the rest of the day.
Yeah. So we now have to dry these. So it's a matter of urgency, right, to get them as soon as off the vine.
Exactly. Yeah. So our hops will probably be on their way through the picking machine and then to be sorted and stripped down to just the little cones, and then we'll be rushing them back to the brewery to get them in the kettle.
Amazing.
The guys have already mashed in, so.
Right.
The time pressure is on.
Set.
Yeah, exactly.
Timer is set, and we need to get these in before it rains again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
While the hops were brought into the warehouse to be picked and bagged up, we grabbed a few minutes with a very busy Ross Hukin, owner of the farm, to talk about the joys and challenges of hop growing in the UK.
So you as a family have been growing here for 125 years. So that puts you, well, it's 1899 would it be then, the first year?
Yeah, we bought the farm around then, yeah.
So the Hukins family have seen this incredible change in the brewing scene going on throughout a century. I guess up until the 90s, everything was cask ale pretty much in the UK. So
pretty
it was
much.
Exactly, pretty much all of your crop. How important is it to you today, the cask ale segment of the industry?
It's still the cornerstone for the market for English hops, for traditional beer styles, bitters and pales. English beers, need English hops for their floral-like characteristics. Cask and English hops are married together.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of hop farms are closing, but you seem to be making quite a success of, like, not just Fuggle and Golding that we're picking today, but also like bringing things like Ernest and Bullion back.
We are just trying to have a range of hops that can do different things in different types of beer to try and keep brewers interested in English hops where they might have been looking at using US hops or imported hops, to make them think again that English hops can have got more potential than that. And I think that's true of Charles Farram's new varieties as well. The more we can do to try and engage brewers with UK hops, the better for our industry. There's 50 growers now, and it's really important we don't lose any more. And we want the industry to flourish. It's got a long heritage, and we want it to have a long future.
Yeah, I mean, I've rubbed a lot of hops in my time from all over the world, but when we were out there in the Goldings field with Greg and rubbing that, and like the honey and spice and got lily-like kind of aromas, just absolutely stunning, like floral and spicy, like utterly unique and big and bold as well. People don't necessarily associate that with British hops, but they can have a lot of character that they can add to all different.
Absolutely, yeah. They're super ripe now. They're going that straw honey colour out in the garden and on the kiln. We test the ripeness of the hops daily in harvest to make sure we pick them when they're bang ripe. Make sure we get that intensity. Yeah,
which is why it's changed 3 or 4 times this week. Which one was being picked, I guess, for us.
Yeah, we're looking at it sort of every 48 hours, trying to make the right decisions on which garden to go to, so they are as intense as we can possibly get them.
Finally, all the hops were loaded onto Greg's hire van and we headed up the motorway to London. On arrival, there was no hesitation. The mash was done, the beer was boiling, and the hops needed to go in right away. It was then that the sheer scale of the task dawned on me. Usually adding hops to the boil of a British bitter is a matter of a few buckets, easily done by one person in a matter of seconds. In their green undried form though, it was an epic undertaking that required a whole team risking life and limb on the ladders to get them in.
They just added the first hop edition, and immediately where I am on the mezzanine, you just got hit by this incredible, really kind of caramelized aroma, I think, of the wort and of the really sticky, spicy kind of hops going in and immediately letting out loads of volatile oils. It smells absolutely incredible, and it's only been 25 kilograms of the 130-ish that are going in to this brew. It's a pretty magical thing to witness. It really is. The volume of hops going in, the heat pouring out as you do, and the incredible aromas just pop and pop and pop. It's a very different aroma to if you're using dried Goldings. It's much more kind of agricultural, pastoral, grassy, spicy, hay, beeswaxy, just miracle stuff.
I don't know what the definition of craft beer is anymore, but I was fairly sure I was witnessing a complete dedication to it. To old processes that have been ironed out of bigger commercial brewing, to traditions that are now entirely niche, to unique flavours people have forgotten, and to an industry often misunderstood. Still though, I had questions.
I got up at 6:30 this morning. Brad drove us to Kent. It was pissing with rain. We got very, very wet, and then we had to drive all the way back to London. We got stuck behind a static caravan and at the Blackwall Tunnel.
And then you had to do some seriously heavy lifting to get these hops in.
Yes. All
Why,
true.
why do you do green hops?
That's a great question. We do green hops because we like a challenge.
Okay, yeah, sure. Clear.
It's no, it's to me it's a celebration. It's a celebration of the British hop industry, and you know it's one of the most exciting times in the year for me. We get to go down, see the hops in the fields. We've just finished brewing of the hops. Those hops were growing in the fields 4 hours ago, maybe,
Yeah.
if not less. And it's just that opportunity to really sort of showcase and celebrate the hops in their most natural form as well.
So we've been speaking for months about doing this, and then during this week, things sort of ramped up as you were like, it's going to be Cascade, no wait, it's going to be Ernest, no
Yeah.
wait, and it was finally Golding, which I guess kind of highlights the agricultural nature of brewing, really.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of out of our hands, and nature and the plants are letting us know when they're ready to pick and
Yeah.
which variety is coming next.
Yeah,
So,
and like obviously that is accentuated with green hops, but it's
Yes.
true throughout the year with everything that we do. The brewers have to use their knowledge and experience to go like, you know, maybe this hop isn't smelling like it usually does, so this is how we
exactly.
use it differently.
Yeah.
And
We adjust, and particularly on a brewery of this scale, you know, we're not massive, so we can't blend batches all the time or blend ingredients. We have to sort of, you know what we're using and adjust as we go along.
yeah, so I think a lot of people have lost sight of that kind of agricultural element, certainly of sort of macro beer, of bigger beers, but it's even more the case with small brews where, like you say, you can't sort of adjust, can't
Yes.
fix it in post, as we
No.
say as YouTubers. You have to get it right on that
Exactly.
on that day, which is also another challenge with green hops because obviously we don't know the bitterness or necessarily the
No.
aromas we're going to get.
No, I mean the hops that didn't come here the rest of them will be kilned and preserved for the rest of the year for us to draw down on as and when we need. And those hops will be analysed, and we'll have all of their beta acids and alpha acids and various oils, and we'll know what we have to play with. But yeah, like you say, these come straight here. We haven't got that analysis yet, and
So we'll taste them in a couple of weeks' time, and
Yeah.
then we'll get the sheets through with the data and go, oh, that's why.
yes,
Yeah.
pretty much. Yeah,
Yeah, wow, it's a pretty wild way to make a commercial
it is.
beer. The other thing that you guys do that a lot of breweries, certainly at the start of the craft beer revolution, very much left behind was cask ale. And I remember we met 11, 12 years ago, and cask was very much your focus then, and it's
Yeah.
not your only thing now, but it's still a
No.
massive part of your business, whereas a lot of breweries they do it for a bit of fun.
Yeah, 100%. You know, it's an important part of our identity as a brand and something that we, keen to champion. And it's the sort of beer if I walk into a pub, the first thing I do is look at what cask ales they have on, and make a decision from there. It's the sort of beer we love drinking, but it's also the heritage of British brewing, isn't it? And it's such a unique product that isn't found across the world.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could fully credit 5 Points, but I think you were definitely part of a real movement back towards celebrating English cask and English styles in cask,
Yeah.
which had sort of been left behind. Was that part of the reason of you doing Best?
For us, it's about championing our heritage. We had been introduced to Shukin's hops, I think it was the year before, and so started having conversations with them and wanted to start using them, and it made sense if we're going to be using British hops to focus on a sort of British style. But at the end of the day, it's the sort of beer that got me interested in brewing many years ago, and something that is close to my heart, really.
A few weeks later, we were at 5 Points pub in Hackney, the Pembury Tavern, for their annual Green Hop Festival. The pub is adorned with hop wreaths, and people come from all over the country to try 5 Points 2 releases, as well as green hop beers from other modern UK producers. It's a phenomenon that happens every year throughout the country, especially in the hop-growing regions of Worcestershire, Herefordshire and Kent.
It's great to see this place packed to the rafters with craft beer fans, real ale fans, and green hop fans. I think it's quite a unique thing. We've got to celebrate it once a year, whatever region of the world you're in. It's bloody amazing. If you're in a hop growing region, you need to do green hop festivals. It's absolutely brilliant to see so many different kinds of people here.
The beers that are served at these historic events are all unique thanks to the variation from farm to farm, field to field and brewer to brewer, and are of course only brewed for a matter of weeks during the year.
So it's weird, it was only, just over 3 weeks ago that we were in the field
Yep.
looking at these hops, and
Yeah,
now...
exactly.
Wow, yeah, brambly, caramelly,
Yeah, and real nice sort of honey caramel
Yeah.
note to it. Yeah,
which Golden's kind of brings this kind of honey
It does,
or
yeah.
honey kind of thing.
Exactly. Goldings is a very sort of traditional hop, traditional UK grown hop. But for me, it's just really nice balance, real nice sort of bit of honey, bit of spice as well, sort of cut grass, hay. But yeah, I'm really happy with how it's come out.
It feels like the kind of smell that we got as we drove up to the hop yard. It just sort of
Exactly.
jumps out of there.
Exactly, which is what green hop is all about.
Yeah.
It's capturing that hop before it goes off for processing. It's that classic sort of harvest celebration, where hops are such a key ingredient in beer for obvious reasons, and to be able to sort of use them in their most natural form and celebrate. This is the first time we've got our hands on the hops for this year's harvest, which we'll be using throughout the year. So it's kind of, in some ways, it's kind of like a version of Beaujolais Nouveau. It's celebrating this season, fresh crop and first opportunity to try them, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great comparison that people might kind of scoff at given the reputation of that day, but I think it's absolutely genuinely the same vibe.
Yeah.
And it should be like beer is not treated as kind of artisan as wine, and that's complete nonsense.
Yes, yeah.
And this is absolutely Beaujolais
Exactly, yeah.
Nouveau. If British hop farming goes into decline or we lose it completely, which I don't think we ever will, it'll always be a niche, these are the kinds of flavours that would be gone.
Yes,
from
exactly.
British brewing.
Yeah. I mean, these are kind of like Goldings is a sort of a bit like it's our kind of noble hop, really. Goldings, Fuggle, the real traditional varieties that have been around for a long time, but they're just such delicate, lovely characters. Really nice. Yeah.
It's been really special to follow this beer's and this year's progress from a farm in Norfolk via another in Kent and to a brewery in London. It's remarkable to see it all come together in such a short space of time, but using traditions and processes that are centuries old. Brewing has been fundamental to Britain's culture and economy for the best part of 1,000 years, but its links to agriculture, to the British countryside and to harvest time is like nothing else. Our landscape would be very different without the brilliance of our brewers and beers past and present, and they need support if they're to be there for the future.